Hi guys, this is Miss Bibler and I'm doing your read aloud today. This is chapter 4 from Friendship According to Humphrey. AJ's stop was before Garth's. Come on over tomorrow, Garth told his friend. As soon as AJ left, Garth moved up to the front of the bus to get away from Bean. What part of sit down don't you understand, Garth? Miss Victoria sounded pretty irritated. Sorry, the cage wouldn't fit on the seat, he said. What on earth is in there anyway? Before Garth could answer, the bus stopped in front of his house. He pulled the blanket down around my cage and hurried down the steps. Miss Tugwell was waiting in the doorway of the house. She had wavy brown hair like her son. She had glasses and freckles like her son, too. She helped him set my cage up on the family room table. Garth's little brother Andy raced into the room. He had wavy brown hair, glasses, and freckles, too. Mine, he shouted. Nope, he's mine, at least for the weekend, said Garth. Tell Andy about Humphrey, Garth's mom said. He's a hamster, and you have to be nice to him, Garth explained. He got that right. I like ham, said Andy, rubbing his stomach. Yum, yum. I hopped onto my wheel to show Andy that a hamster wasn't anything like a ham. Whee! Ham go round, said Andy. Garth's mother brought in a plate of peanut butter and crackers. Oh, that smelled good. How was school? She asked. Okay, said Garth. But, Mom, could you say something to Bean's mom? He's mean to everyone on the bus. Martin Bean? Garth's mom sounded surprised. Why, he's always polite when I see him. Well, he's not polite any other time, Garth explained. He tripped a girl on the bus and called everybody names. That doesn't sound like Martin. What did the driver do? Nothing, Garth answered. Well, I think she should be the one to work things out, said Mrs. Tugwell. But you're friends with Mrs. Bean. I probably won't be if I complain about her son. Maybe if you were friendlier to him, he'd act nicer. Mom, Garth moaned. It's worth a try, his mom suggested. I had to squeak up. He's the meanest bean I've ever seen. Goodness, what's the matter with Humphrey? Asked Miss Tugwell. Maybe he doesn't like Marty either. Did he skip a page? No. Maybe he doesn't like Marty either, Garth muttered. He's one smart guy. Shortly after Mr. Tugwell came home, Natalie arrived. She was the babysitter, but I didn't see any babies around for her to sit on. Garth wasn't a baby, Andy wasn't a baby, and certainly I was no baby. Natalie had black hair and wore a black shirt, black pants, and black shoes. She had glasses with black frames. Her lips were bright red. Order a pizza, said Garth's dad, handing Natalie some money. I got some videos for the guys. Okay, said Natalie. Mind if I do some homework? As long as you get the boys in bed at 9, Mrs. Tugwell explained. Natalie glanced at my cage. What about the rat? I felt quite discouraged. I'd already been called mouse and a ham that day. He's a hammer, Andy yelled. Oh, a hamster, how cute, said Natalie, leaning toward my cage. Hi there, big boy. Whew, after a miserable week and a rough ride home, I suddenly felt a whole lot better. Later, the boys ate pizza and watched videos while Natalie read from a big, thick book. What's that? Asked Andy, leaning over her shoulder. How come it doesn't have any pictures? College books don't have pictures. Andy wrinkled his nose. What's college? Natalie sighed. After you go to high school and graduate, if you want a good job like a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, you have to go to college. I know that, Garth piped in. City College is right down the street. Mom took classes there last year. That's where I go, said Natalie. I'm studying psychology. The way she said it, that big word sounded like psychology. But the words on her book was spelled psychology. I wrote it down in my notebook later. I hope that word is never on a spelling test. In psychology, you find out what's inside people's heads. The babysitter reached for Andy's head. Ooey gooey brains, said Garth. Don't go in my head, screamed Andy, leaping off the couch. Natalie laughed. Not like that. Psychology teaches you how people think. Do you know what I'm thinking? Andy shook his head. I'm thinking it's time for bed, Natalie said. 9 o'clock. The boys both groaned. Not yet. Garth protested. Andy folded his arms. "You can't make me," he said, firmly. Surprisingly, Natalie sat back and smiled. "I guess you're right. I can't make you." Andy's eyes practically bugged out of his head. "Huh? Why don't you put on another video? We can stay up till your parents get back," the babysitter continued. "It'll be fun." "Yeah," Garth explained as he and his brother gleefully high-fived each other. But I was a little confused. Hadn't Mrs. Tugwell told her to get the boys in bed at 9? I was sure that Natalie had lost her mind. Garth settled back on the couch. After a minute, his smile disappeared. "When do you think Mom and Dad will be back?" Natalie shrugged her shoulder. "They didn't say." "Won't they be upset if we're still up?" "I guess we'll find out, won't we?" Natalie answered with a mischievous grin. Andy looked worried. "They'll be mad if we're not in bed." "So," said Natalie, "we still have time to watch more TV." Garth stood up and yawned loudly. "I'm kind of tired." "Me too," said Andy, stretching his arms. Natalie smiled. "Well, if you really think so, okay. You two get ready for bed, and I'll be up in a minute." As the brothers raced upstairs, Natalie chuckled to herself, then leaned in toward my cage. "And that, Humphrey Hamster, is what is called reverse psychology. You get people to do what you want by telling them to do the opposite." Reverse psychology. Remember, it's pronounced psychology. So that's how people's minds work. Just tell them to do the opposite of what you want them to do. You can sure learn a lot at college. You can learn a lot from a good babysitter, too. The next afternoon, AJ came over to Garth's house to play. Miss Tugwell took Andy out to buy new shoes. Mr. Tugwell was paying bills in the kitchen. The boys were alone with me in the family room. "Humphrey needs some exercise," said AJ. "Let's take him out." "Okay, you can watch him while I go clean his cage." AJ gently took me out while Garth put on gloves and began to clean my cage. Both boys chuckled when he got to my potty corner. Everyone does. But he did a good job of cleaning it. When he worked, they talked. "Any chance your dad can drive us Monday morning?" asked Garth. AJ shook his head as he gently petted me. "He has to leave for work really early." "How about your dad?" Garth shook his head. "He always talks about how he had to walk to school and how lucky I am to ride a bus." I wonder, my reader mind is thinking, why don't they want to ride the bus? We know the answer to that, don't we? "I know," AJ sighed and set me down on the table. "Watch it," said Garth. He set a row of big, tall books all around the edge of the table. "We don't want Humphrey to get away." "Maybe he'll be sick on Monday," Garth suggested. "Are you kidding? He's the healthiest guy at school. Man, if he wasn't so big, I'd really give it to him," said AJ, making a fist. "Me too," Garth agreed. It wasn't hard to figure out that they were talking about Big Mean Marty Bean. "I don't know why Mr. Victoria always takes his side," Garth said after a while. "He knows how to not get caught." The boys were silent again until Garth said, "Miranda was getting a drink at the fountain at recess, and he came up and pushed her out of the way." The thought of someone pushing Golden Miranda, an almost perfect human, really ruffled my fur. Does he have fur? I wonder what he meant by that, ruffled his fur. "Did she tell?" asked AJ. "Yeah. He said he didn't do it," Garth explained. "Said he wasn't anywhere near her. He and Kirk did it. Kirk almost got in trouble, so Miranda said it was a mistake to get Kirk off the hook." "Kirk the jerk." "That's what Bean calls him," said Garth. "He's got a name for everybody. That's why he doesn't have any friends." He stepped back and pulled off his rubber gloves. "I think that's one clean cage." "Great," I squeaked. "But what are we going to do about Bean?" "Bean's a pretty funny name," AJ said with a chuckle. "Bean brain." "Bean breath," said Garth. The boys started laughing. "Bean bag, bean jeans, green bean, mean bean. Hey, that rhymes. Mean green bean." Miss Brisbane would be proud to hear them rhyming. I like hearing them laugh. However, I was worried. Bean had said something about a mousetrap. The mere mention of those contraptions makes me shiver and quiver, and I didn't want to see anybody get tripped or pushed again. Ready to go back, Humphrey Dumpty? Asked Garth. Yes, I squeaked, which for some reason made the boys howl with laughter again. Once I was back in the cage, the boys went up to play in Garth's room. That gave me time to think. Here were Garth and AJ, really good friends. They were nice to each other and stuck together. Marty Bean wasn't friendly to anyone, and he didn't have any friends. All my classmates liked Og, but when I offered to be his friend, he leaped at me in a very rude way. The business of friendship is not as easy as it sounds, I figured, just before dozing off for a long afternoon nap. It was nice at Garth's house that weekend. Hold on. It was nice at Garth's house that weekend. The announcer on TV said it was cold, cold, cold outside, so the Tugwells stayed inside. The family popped popcorn, did that smell good, and they watched TV and snuggled on the couch. As happy as I should have been, I worried about Monday's bus ride. What I needed was a plan, and maybe a little psychology. Are you sure the little guy won't catch cold? Asked Mrs. Tugwell as Garth was ready to leave for school on the Monday. He's got a fur coat, and I'll cover him, Garth assured her. I was plunged into total darkness as he threw a blanket over the cage. Bye, Ham, shouted Andy. Bye, Andy, I squeaked back. After all, a ham isn't the worst thing that a person can call you. Soon I heard the squeal of the bus's brakes as it stopped in front of the Tugwell's house. All aboard, I heard Miss Victoria say. Find a seat. This cage is too big. Can't I sit it up here? Asked Garth. Do you see any empty seats up here? The bus driver replied. Get moving and keep moving. I was already queasy just thinking about Bean. As Garth walked toward the back of the bus, looking for an empty seat, my cage swayed back and forth like a ship on a rough sea, which didn't help my stomach at all. Like a ship on a rough sea. That's a simile. That's a comparison. Once we sat down, the bus started. Oh,